Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to Brewing with Magic. Well, it's that time again. Spoiler season. Time for some new cards, right, Will? Hello, Will.
Heck yeah. Hey, everybody.
Can't do spoiler season without my boy, Will. So, today we are going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons, Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. So, this set is actually taking the place of the core set this year. So, you're not going to be seeing that one, and that's why it looks like there's 4 in this particular block. But who cares, because this looks super, super exciting, and I am stoked. So before I ask Will's opinion on these cards, I'm going to just go over the mechanics real quick with you. So these are the dungeons. There are 3 of them in this set. You can have all 3 of them in your deck. They start out in your sideboard, but they do not limit your sideboard. You can have 15 cards plus those 3. I'm correct on that, right, Will?
That is correct.
Okay, I did read that right.
100%.
So you can, so the key word to get one of these in play is you will play a card that says venture into the dungeon. When you play a card that triggers that onto the stack, you get to choose one of these and put it into, I believe the command zone is what they're calling it. But it's kind of like a token or in exile, but they're saying specifically the command zone, right? Yeah. Okay, so, and then you go into the very first room, and when you play another card that also says venture into the dungeon, you now go into the next room of your choice, and then so on and so forth until you've completed it. Once you land into the last room, the trigger will go onto the stack, and then it will be completed. One interesting note, if you play something that completes this, completes one of the dungeons and also gives you the trigger of venture into the dungeon again, you're actually going to put that trigger on the stack, and you're going to bring the new dungeon out, go into the first room, that will resolve, and then you resolve the previous dungeon that you already completed. Kind of weird, but that's how Magic works with stacks, but a little weird with this particularly. Now, once you've completed it and you hit a venture into the dungeon again, you may then choose to either play the exact same one, maybe that's what your deck is built around, or you could choose a whole new dungeon. So, did I miss anything there? I think I kind of got all of the information on how the dungeons works nice and wrapped up there, but did I miss anything important?
No, that's great.
Okay.
And that's a great mechanic explanation, because honestly, it's going to be new for everybody, and it's really important that we kind of like talk about just the basics. So I loved it. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna go over them one at a time. I'm just going to tell the name of them, and then Will, I would love it if you would please kind of tell us what you think the card is going to be good in: mid-range, rush, control, or what combo. I don't know, you tell me, and then kind of give me an idea or two of what decks they would currently fit in, even though the meta is going to change when this all comes out. That way people will kind of have an idea of what kind of decks that they can work well in. So we're going to start off first with the simplest or the least amount of rooms, and that is Tomb of Annihilation. So Will, why don't you go ahead and tell the good people what you think about Tomb of Annihilation.
So this is the fastest dungeon that you complete. And it has either the left side, which will take you about 3 steps to complete the dungeon, or you can go to the right side and it'll take you 2 steps to complete the dungeon. So it's the fastest dungeon to complete. The coolest part about this, though, is how it affects either both of you or just you. So the decks that I was looking at that can go through this, and I'll let you explain like each tier of this as we kind of go through these decks, so they can understand why these decks might be very good with the Tomb of Annihilation. Okay. So the first one I came up with was the Bastion Deck. So the Bastion Deck alone has a lot of mechanics that you just want to sack your own stuff. You want to help them lose life. You're discarding things, but also drawing cards pretty quickly. So do you want to go through each of these steps real quick? And then I'll explain why the Bastion Deck goes well with it. Okay, so when you enter the Tomb of Annihilation, the first thing you're going to do is enter Trapped Entity, which, everyone has a name. Instead of saying the names, I'm just going to talk about what they do so we don't get all clogged down. You can see it. So right when you enter the Tomb of Annihilation, the first thing you're going to do is each player loses 1 life. Then you're going to take 2 paths from there. The first path, you're going to go through 2 different rooms before the end, and that is the first one is each player loses 2 life unless they discard a card. And then the next one is each player loses 2 life unless they sacrifice an artifact, a creature, or a land. Or you could go down the other side of the path, which is definitely a little scary, so I'm hoping that the last room is pretty powerful, but it's discard a card, sacrifice an artifact, a creature, and a land. There's no or like on the other side. You got to do them all if they are on the board to do that side of the card. And then lastly, either way you go is going to bring you into the last room, which is create an Atropol, which I believe is a very classic D&D character. I've
lightly know D&D, so it's fun that this is happening, but I don't know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's create an Atropol, a legendary 4/4 black god horror creature token with deck touch. Now, I'm really hoping that 4/4 has like indestructible already stamped on it, and then they're saying this also gives it death touch, because it better be strong. But yeah, that's what this card does.
Yeah, and that's why going and using the Tomb of Annihilation, you really are trying to get to those triggers as fast as you can. As new cards are coming out, they're probably going to be very beneficial. There's going to be a lot of things that say when you complete a dungeon, you get X. And this is the fastest one to get to that X as quickly as possible. So building a deck around that mechanic is very viable. So why a Bastion deck, right? So you're making creatures, you're making tokens very quickly. If they die, you gain a life. It triggers that effect. If you're discarding cards, so be it. You know, it's not really affecting you as much because your CMC is usually 3 or less anyways in that deck size. And then also, if you're forcing them to make that choice of sacrificing things as well, great. But if you go the other way and you sacrifice an artifact, well, you don't have artifacts in the Bastion deck. If it's a creature, it might be one of your tokens. And if you're discarding a card, oh well. And if there's a land card, well, your CMC is 3. So if you have to, you're probably going to get into what you need anyways. Now, depending on what other creatures are coming up, but remember, you have like plum cards and other things in those decks to help you redraw back into, so you're affecting them at the same time. The other 2 decks that I was also thinking about was Doom Foretold decks. So Doom Foretold decks, you want stuff in your graveyard. You know, eventually
and you don't
can
want
also
your opponent
dance.
to have anything.
Yeah, and you don't, and so you're already sacking their stuff regardless, or you're making them discard regardless. And then if it's a Dance the Man's version, then you're getting your stuff back anyway. So that fixes itself. The other one are Rakdo Stacks. So Rakdo Stacks is the same thing. You're making them discard, you're getting rid of stuff. You actually want stuff in your grave card so you can reoccur stuff. And the reason I was bringing up the Doom Foretold is think about Yorion lists, right? You have stuff as like Golden Egg. So Golden Egg, it's an artifact. It hits the battlefield. You're drawing a card, so you're making up for the difference. Or if you're sacking it, so be it. Same thing with Omen of the Sun. You know, you're dropping an enchantment. You're creating 2/1/1s. Now you're sacking one of those 1/1s. So you're moving the deck along, but you're still getting the benefit. And then eventually you'll get a 4/4 that's a legendary. Now, the legendary might be the most important part of that card. We don't know yet because there might be other things that might help that legendary creature. Yeah. That we haven't seen.
Like,
that
why is
might
it legendary?
Be an effect.
Unless there's something else on the card.
And that's what I'm thinking. And then the other thing too
better be indestructible. I'm telling you. It better be.
Well, and then the other thing too is you're completing a dungeon. So and that is why I think those decks might work with this dungeon specifically the fastest.
I also think it would work really good with mono black enchantments or auras, whatever you want to call the deck. But my only concern with this card is because we just don't know how these work yet. Is this going to be hard coded to where if you don't have an artifact creature, artifact and a creature and a card to discard, will it let you choose that side? You know how there's cards in Magic, you know, counter target creature spell.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even an option to cast it. If there's, you can't get it, just cast it to get it in your graveyard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm hoping that it's just like, do these things. You have to do them if you can.
If you can.
Not
and I think
you have to have them to do.
And that's what I think. I think this is if you can. So imagine if you didn't have a card in hand. Imagine if you didn't have a creature on the battlefield. Imagine if you didn't have an artifact.
You just lose a land.
And say you have 5 lands and you lose one, now you're down to 4 lands. That's the best case scenario. Nothing happens to you other than you losing a land and you move forward.
Yeah, and if your deck is built to be a 2-3 drop deck and you have 5 lands, you could just keep playing this tomb over and over and just get its. Well, I mean, if they get rid of your god horror, we don't know what's going on with that yet. You don't need that many legendaries because you.
It's true. So because you can't. It's a one-time deal.
Let's go ahead and move along to the next dungeon, which is Lost Mine of Fendelver. So, do you want to talk about it a little first, or do you want me to tell them what it is?
Yeah, I'll just, in my opinion, right off the bat, like, before we go into this one, I started thinking about those, like, mid-rangey decks that really can see a lot of value on both sides of this. And, you know, a couple things, and I'll get into details in a second, but, I mean, Blue-Red comes to mind, Naya comes to mind, Gruul comes to mind, but let's go into the dungeon first,
I
and I'll
actually think
explain.
Mono-Red might work, too, depending on what they give us. But, so, when you first enter, this one's got a few more rooms. And when you first enter it, you're going to enter in Scry 1. So nothing like scrying is maybe worth half a card. Nothing crazy there, but you're in the dungeon. From there, you're going to have 2 different paths that will split into 2 separate paths, but they can also merge into one middle. So the next you can either choose is create a 1/1 red goblin creature token, or you can go the other direction, which is create a treasure token. So like Will was saying, you kind of get to decide here, do you want a creature or do you want a mana ramp? Okay?
Yep.
Now, if you go the 1/1 red goblin creature token side, you can choose to also, when you go to the next level, you could choose to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, or you can go into the room that either side can go into, they share, which is each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. And then from the second tier going down the right side, the mine tunnels, it can also choose its own side, which is target creature gets -4/-0 until your next turn. That really helps if they've got one of those pesky Mire Tritons in play. And then, then from there, all three rooms lead into the final room to complete the dungeon, which is draw a card. So,
and this is why I kind of got excited about this one, because everyone's like, you're not really getting, I know you're getting actually pretty good value if you build a deck or if you have a deck that's kind of centric around this. So the first one that came to mind was like those Izzet decks right now, right? We've seen a lot of the Goldspan Dragons. We've seen a lot of that mid-range control. And I think it fits into that right side very easily, right? So you scry once, you're already kind of getting into what you need. You create that treasure token, which benefits your Izzet deck. And then you move down one. Either you're going to make them lose a life, you gain a life, or, which I like better, is the -4/-0. So you're locking down one of their biggest creatures for a turn to set up your next turn. And then you draw your card and then go off on whatever you're going to do. So you're already in advantage of already causing damage, probably going for the win, little things along those lines. So that's where Izzet came into mind. When I was thinking Naya, I was thinking Naya Adventures. So in this case, you're going to the left. You're creating that 1/1 red goblin creature token. Bloodstruck Beast, exactly. You have those type of things. You have Toskies. So you're getting into that point where now you're creating smaller value, moving your board along, still getting your adventure cards out, doing what you need to do, and then eventually getting to that draw card, completing that dungeon. So there's a lot of like little things there. And then finally, the other one was Gruul. So you have faster haste your creatures, you're putting stuff on the board. Now, if you need to ramp to get yourself up there quicker, great. Or you go the other side, creating that 1/1 red goblin creature token, getting that +1/1 counter. Maybe you need to push through for some damage. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and I think those mid-rangey decks kind of fall into this category. So I kind of got excited when I saw this, and I was like, oh, okay, I can see where this can fit.
And remember, if you have a 1/1 on the board, only one of them, and a Lovestruck Beast, put the +1/+1 on the beast.
Yep.
I can't wait to see that mistake. Now, one thing I really like about this, because most of the decks, 2 of the 3, I believe, you just said, would have a Lovestruck Beast in it, at least until September. So the cool thing is, if your deck is dungeon-centric, your opponent's always trying to kill that silly 1/1. It's hard for a lot of people to kill the Lovestruck Beast. So if they can't kill the Lovestruck Beast, they're always trying to get rid of that 1/1. Well, you can just keep pulling this out if your deck is built, and you got a 1/1 built into your deck, like just an extra card in your hand at all times. And you can just, because it's not hard to complete this, and you just get back into it. So, pretty strong card. You ready for the last one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
It's going to be a while. It's going to take a bit. This one has a lot of stuff going on. Now, this one is Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So, give us a little before I get into this.
So when I saw this dungeon, the one thing that excited me about this was like, hey, I love control decks, and this dungeon specifically wants to last the test of time. Now, if you can get through it faster, and you have centric cards that might be coming out, which I'll explain after we get through this dungeon, which I think might move this along even faster. But when I first saw it, how I wanted to build around it was, again, control decks. I was thinking like Sultai, I was thinking Azorius, I was thinking mid-range value decks, and we'll get into that in a second. I'll let you go down this first, though. Okay.
So when you first enter this, I said I wasn't going to say the names, but this one's so long you could get tired, so I think it's a joke. The play on words, they're calling it Yawning Portal. Is that something in D&D? Because to me, it's like, look at all this. You're going to fall asleep reading this.
Oh yeah, it's a real thing. It's a portal into darkness.
Okay, so it's not a joke. Okay, so when you first enter this dungeon, I just was like, that's hilarious. Okay, wizards. But when you first enter, you gain 1 life, okay? From there, you're going to enter the next level, and you have no choice. You're just going to the next level, and it's Scry 1. Yep. And then we're going to get to split. You can choose one of 2 directions. You can either create a treasure token, a little bit of ramp, or target creature can't attack you until the next turn. Really good in a control deck, just to slow down that Fervent Champion or that Robber the Rich or those pesky white creatures. From there, both sides are going to trickle back into one choice, which is Scry 2 now. And then once again, we're going to get to split. So you can either exile the top 2 cards of your library, you may play them. It doesn't even say that turn. So I don't know how that works. I think you could just play them whenever. Or you can create 2 1/1 black skeleton creature tokens. That's not bad value right there. Both of those rooms are going to go into one they have no choice of. You guessed it, Scry 3. which is pretty big because the last one of this one is pretty powerful. So you know this is getting play from control decks. Draw 3 cards and reveal them. You may cast one of them without paying its mana cost. Didn't say you have to discard the rest. You don't have to put them at the bottom of your library. You keep them. You just get to play one of them for free.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So when I saw this one, I was like, I am excited to see how we can take advantage of this. So I always thought right off the bat, you know, how can I get through this but still get the most value? So one of them was, again, Sultai control, and everyone plays Sultai right now. You have the Yorion Sultai, and depending on what cards come out, they still might be of value. And if that's the case,
at least till September.
At least till September, exactly. And then, so if that's the case, then you're definitely going to have that mid-rangey, long game pull out where you're able to kind of go through this, scry, get what you need, move yourself forward, protect yourself, and then eventually just win. So
I mean, in a control deck, those 2/1/1s as little blockers alone, after not letting a creature attack early on, like you're just stalling your opponent out.
Yes.
2/1/1s kills a fervent champion.
Yeah, and we honestly don't know if there might be like, hey, counter that spell, or, you know, venture into the dungeon, or deal 3 damage, venture into the dungeon. We don't know if those cards exist yet, and they might. If they do, they fit perfectly into control decks. Yeah. The other one was Azorius control. So white control, we already know that there's you know, going to be creatures of value that are going to help you venture forward, and blue-white seems to be one of those areas that you could probably manipulate a little bit better, still control the board, counter what you need, put creatures on the board, move yourself forward. So I definitely think that might be a viable deck. And then mid-range value, like think about, you know, being able to drop enchantments, put creatures down, you know, draw cards, gain 2 life, put down planeswalkers, all of those things to kind of keep yourself alive, but still progressing your board forward. So I honestly believe that control decks are going to see a lot of value out of this card specifically.
Well, thank you very much, Will. Now, I do want to tell everybody out there, there are a lot of people out there that are kind of, okay, I get it. Change is scary. Things you don't understand are scary. We have no idea what this is going to do to the game, and there's a lot of people, oh, it's going to ruin it all. It's the new companions. Let's not do that. Wizards have given us plenty to be angry at and yell at them for, cutting pro money and cutting the content creator pro, all these other things. That's important. Focus on that. Let's have fun with this set. Let's see what it'll do. Let's not be negative about a new set when there's so many reasons to need new cards and new mechanics to try to break up the monotony of what's already happening. So let's all just really take this in and think, wow, how fun, and what can we do with it? That's what I think.
And I have a great idea already. So one of the ideas that I was already thinking, especially with these dungeons and how to get more value out of them, flicker effects, right? So one of the biggest things I was already thinking about was using, like, you know, Thassa, right, to flicker.
And just flicker over every turn.
You know, and we just got new flicker effects too in Historic. So there's going to be a lot of really cool things that we can do for
Historic
ETB
around
triggers. and the other one too is creatures that might duplicate ETB effects. So there's going to be other things, or taking extra turns and being able to get an extra effect. So all of these things are going to speed along these dungeons to help really push the board and help you bounce. I mean, think about Yorion. Think about ETB triggers. So imagine you having 2 or 3 creatures on the board that help you move along the dungeon. And then you Yorion, and you flicker those creatures, and you move 3 more times up the dungeon. So technically, you can Dungeon of the Mad Mage in almost 2 turns. One where you get all those out, and then another one where you drop the Yorion. So, and then you instantly get to play a card for free, and say it's an extra turn card. Now you do it again. It's crazy.
And put it this way, with mono white, rogues, Yorion, cycling, let's not stick with the devil you know concept. I want to know the devil we don't know. Get it?
Yep.
This is devils in this set. Yeah. You got to explain a bad dad joke. So I'm really excited. I know a lot of people are nervous, but I think this is going to be an absolute blast and a whole new way to play Magic without, like, ruining the game. So it's not like they added planeswalkers all of a sudden. Yeah, I've been playing a lot. So anyways, anything else you would like to tell the people before we go for the day, Will?
Okay, honestly, I just want to say thank you to all of our subscribers. Thank you for, you know, for those people who have been signing up and enjoying our content. And we really just want to be fresh and have fun with it. You know, that's why we like to put out fun, different decks, you know, that are competitive but still entertaining. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. I appreciate it.
And I agree wholeheartedly. So thank you all very much for watching. We really hope you appreciated this. Please check the description down below, because we're doing something super special when we hit 500 subscribers, and you're going to want to know what it is. So please rate, review, and subscribe. If you've already smashed that button, thank you very much. It means the world to us, and we're glad you're part of the Brew Crew. And as always, until next time, have a blast in the arena.